This is our Why NYC Activate webinar. As hopefully a lot of you know, we just opened up our application cycle, so we're here to give you some information on Activate and why joining Activate New York is a good idea. Um, so a little bit about the folks on the call. We are your New York team and your Activate team at large. So the New York team is Andrew Chang, our managing director, Natasha Feschbach, our fellowship manager, and myself. I'm Haley Faust. I'm the fellowship associate. And then we've also got two New York fellows on the call here, Ian McKendry, who's from cohort 2024, and Katie Williamson, who's from cohort 2025. They'll have some time about halfway through the call to introduce themselves and tell you guys a little bit about their journey through Activate. We've also got two folks from the Activate national team, Rick Kapinski, who is our recruitment director, and Ava, who is also on here, um, helping out with recruitment, our recruitment intern, or excuse me, yeah, our recruitment intern. So that's the Activate team on the call. A little bit about what we'll be talking about today. I'll spend 10 minutes going through an overview of the fellowship, getting into the nitty-gritty details about what Activate can provide to you all. We'll talk a little bit about Activate New York specifically, and then I'll pass the baton over to Andrew Chang to talk about some of our fellows from the New York community and some of their successes, what they've been up to, what tech they're working on. And then from there, we'll go over to Ian and Katie, and they'll introduce themselves, talk about their journey to Activate, and you guys can ask them some questions about what their process was like, and then we'll do a broader Q&A and some more details at the end. So without further ado, I will jump in. Um, for an overview of the fellowship, a little bit about Activate, we saw a gap in support for early stage entrepreneurial scientists and built this fellowship to meet that need. We created a pathway for scientists whose research was too applied for basic science, but too early for industry because they were often at an impasse, left with no career path that really could satisfy them. So, our fellowship is an intentional path that enables scientists and engineers to transform their idea into a product that can address real and profound societal needs. Um, so our fellows work across 16 verticals, aligned with the broader mission to address climate change or other global challenges by reinventing our economy to become sustainable, resilient, and equitable. In each of these areas, Activate has been assembling a coalition of funders, commercial partners, industry advisors, tech experts, and more to help guide you through the process of building a company. So these are some stats that we're pretty proud of. How the Activate Fellowship works. So since 2015, when we launched and spun out of Lincoln Berkeley National Labs in California, we have supported 295 fellows and created 236 science-based companies, some of which have gone on to change the world and will continue to go on to change the world. Over all of those companies, we've had over 4 billion in follow-on funding, um, an average of 6 million in average follow-on funding for Activate companies raised during the fellowship. Again, these are just a list of statistics that we're really proud of, but I do want to zero in on this last one on the page here, the 97% of fellow companies still being active today. This is over 10 years and over 236 companies that are still around, all startups that came through Activate with first-time founders. So this is pretty rare. Startups don't typically have this high of a success rate and lifetime. So we are really, really proud to boast that the companies that come into Activate stick around. A little bit more on how it works here. So this is a 2-year fellowship program. As a fellow, you get $100,000 a year plus a travel allowance, health insurance, and relocation support. And then on top of that, there's another $100,000 in R&D funds that your company will get or you will get through the fellowship. Um, we help you find an expert community of advisors and partners and champions for your tech. We have a team of managing directors. As I said, Andrew Chang is the current New York managing director. They all act as mentors for you throughout your time in the fellowship program. We also have an unparalleled network of scientists, engineers, technologists, and entrepreneurs, and a vibrant national wide community of fellows and industry experts, folks in labs, all the above. Some of our world class tools include entrepreneurial education and world class research expertise. So uh, I will make sure that all of this is available to you all. I think we'll drop some of these links in the chat also later on. But there's lots of information here, and it's a really exciting fellowship program. So, to get into the fellowship, a little bit about eligibility requirements. You must have a bachelor's degree plus 4 years of post degree experience. So, that can be in a lab, it can be a PhD, a postdoc, it can be hands on experience engineering out in the field, run the gambit, but 4 years of post baccalaureate scientific research. You also must be leading the commercial development of this tech, so the innovation has to be yours. You also have to be a first-time founder. Um, this has to be your first startup company. You must be committed full-time or prepared to commit full-time to the proposed project when if awarded the fellowship. You also must be able to legally work in the US for the duration of the fellowship. We do not sponsor visas. Um, and you must be able to communicate proficiently in English. Uh, Also, your proposed project or company must be based in the physical or biological sciences or related to an engineering discipline. It must be developed. It must still be in development and not fully at scale yet. And then lastly, you have to have raised less than 2 million in dilutive funding. In terms of grants, we don't care how much you've taken in, but less than 2 million in the non-dilutive, or in the, excuse me, dilutive funding. A little bit on New York specifically now. Um, this is a little snapshot into what we call New York local sometimes. Our community includes 18 current fellows and 17 alumni across 32 total companies. And here you can see some pictures of time at retreats and bonding activities together, demoing, programming, sometime in the office. It runs the gambit. And along the bottom are some of our partners. We love the New York ecosystem and love helping contribute to its growth. A little bit on what our fellowship curriculum looks like here. Every other Thursday, we ask our fellows to come in uh, for programming days, which this first bullet kind of encompasses those programming days. We have unstructured fellow lunch at the beginning, so time that we expect you all to be in, but time to chat, hang out with your other fellows. Then that 1:30 to 3 p.m. slot is local programming, which is an educational opportunity. And the bullet below, you can see some examples of what programming has consisted of. We've done negotiations workshops. We've brought in panels of venture capitalists to talk about what they're looking for in the market at any given moment. We've had roundtables. We've brought in founders to talk about their founder journey. Really runs the gambit depending on what our fellows need in the moment. After that programming slot, we often do collisions, which is what we call like targeted networking opportunities or one-on-one opportunities for fellows to meet external stakeholders or community members. So it can be with speakers that come in, it can be with, again, investors. Sometimes we'll bring in lawyers or accountants. Again, it's very based on what our fellows need at the moment. And then in that 4 to 6 slot after, we try and do social hours, community building opportunities. This is not always every other Thursday, but very often we'll have some social time after programming. And then we also host some optional programming sessions to supplement those biweekly curriculum opportunities. We've done roundtables and lunch and learns. Sometimes other organizations will host us and the fellows. We try and give as many opportunities for you all to learn as possible. And then also quarterly, we'll do social gatherings for the fellows. We've done trivia nights, potlucks, Central Park picnics. It's always a good time to be together, again, building that community beyond just intellectually and for your business, but also being a founder can be lonely. So bringing in friends, people that you can trust and lean on, and creating time and space for those relationships. And some pictures of all of that on the side here. We've got an office for programming. We ask most often that fellows come in person every other Thursday. So we are, you can see on the map, between 29th and 30th on Fifth Avenue. It's a great working space for fellows to come in. Sometimes they'll use the office as their own space. So you can see our New York team in the middle here, some just opportunities to come in and hang out. We're here on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, but the fellows have access to the office 5 days a week. So sometimes they'll bring in investors, or if there's a potential hire, they can interview folks in our office, use it as their own. We've got two different meeting spaces, two different phone booths, and then the office at large that is just space for everyone to use. Um, Beyond the local curriculum, we also have the National Fellowship curriculum, which quarterly consists of, oh, well, I'll start with EOE actually. Your first quarter in Activate, we have elements of entrepreneurship, which is what we call EOE. This is like 101s of basic business often. So we talk about advisors and company financing models, or how to do an elevator pitch and perfect your one liner, building your network, those kinds of things. That's your first quarter in Activate. And then your next 7 quarters, we have FLIPS, which is Founders Learning in Pods. That's what the FLIPS stands for. Um, and those are also like business education opportunities. So we have flips in negotiations and corporate partnerships, management 101, hiring, again, really runs the gambit. We try and suit them based off of what our fellows need and are asking for. But we've been working to refine and perfect these educational opportunities as well. So never not learning here at Activate. Also, each June, as we onboard a new cohort, Activate fellows and staff go off to our retreat, which is one of our favorite traditions at Activate. So it's actually been a couple of months now since June, but we went off to Santa Cruz this past year, or this past summer, where we talk about core values and life mapping. We talk about how to handle failure and how to discuss failure, values and storytelling, all those kinds of things. And it's also just some really great bonding time for you and your community, you and your cohort, and the fellows at large, Activate at large. You guys to get to know staff as well. So those are some of our bigger learning opportunities. I'll also note, I can see that there's some stuff happening in the chat I'm not being so attentive to right now. Um, Moving forward, we've got another big pull for New York and the New York community is our New York Climate Week. This is coming up in 2 weeks now. Climate Week is a big opportunity for Activate fellows because Activate likes to have a big presence. We've got, I think, 6 different events that we're co-hosting this year. Links to all of them, but on our website, you can see if you go to Activate and then Activate News, you'll see all of these links as well to sign up, see where we're going to be. If there's things that you're interested in, if you want to meet some of the fellows, this is a good spot to find them. It again runs the gambit from non-venture pathway opportunities to founder roundtables, and our biggest event is our Deep Tech Showcase, which last year had over 500 people attend. So big exciting stuff coming down the pipeline soon as well. And now I will pass the baton off to Andrew to talk a little bit more about some of our fellows.
Great, thank you, Haley. I don't see the screen anymore. Is that just me? Oh, I just changed my tab. Never mind. Delighted to meet you all. Thank you again, Haley. I get the privilege of talking a little bit about some of the fellows in our program. Um, the first thing that I want to say, before we get started is that there's so many ways for a incredible technology, to fail before it even takes off. And we see this time and time again coming out of university, academic labs, spinouts, and things like that, whereas you use incredible breakthrough tech, but the initial conditions are not, there for a very strong foundation to set up the team, the founder, our fellows, the company for success. And so we spend a lot of our time really supporting each individual and each company, from first principles to set up each one for success. And what does that mean? It means we go pretty darn deep into each company and with very hands-on support, which means we can't support very many. We only support on the order of up to 10 fellows per year. And this is a 2-year long duration program because hard tech is hard and long. And so, that's up to 20 companies, that we support at any given time. But once you become a fellow, we have a saying where you're always a fellow. And a lot of fellows, as Haley mentioned, stick around and be part of our community. And this is one of the most beautiful things about the Activate Fellowship is, it is a community of people trying to change the world, trying to do really difficult things together. And it's just become such a beautiful thing to see a lot of the alumni continue to stay engaged, give back, mentor, work with each other, support each other, and so, that's something that we take a lot of pride in. And even with the events like the Deep Tech Showcase and Climate Week that he was talking about, we have a large group of alumni coming, a large group of investors that have been partners with us and to our community for many, many years. So this is a product of 10 years now of building a community and these programs and iterating on it and just getting it right so that we can support you and set you up for success. So with that, let's talk about a couple fellows. Here in New York, we do have some interesting, companies and themes. So the one theme that we have here, is in carbon management. We have supported a number of companies in the carbon capture, in the carbon utilization and storage spaces. And this is an example of 3 companies that are in the same general space, that can learn and grow and work together and learn to help grow this overall ecosystem. And each one of these companies are very complementary and synergistic. So we have Yang Shi, who spun out a technology out of Columbia University, where he was a PhD student and postdoc. He spent the past 10 years um, in developing novel sorbents for direct air capture technology. And we're very excited about his progress. You can see like on the left there, that was one of his first prototypes, and then on the right is one of the more recent ones, where it's now he went from a kilogram scale. Actually, he started at a gram scale, and then by the time he finished Activate, he was at the ton scale for building this direct air capture system. And we're excited because this is among the lowest energetics um, technologies that we've seen in the market, and they've continued to execute since they have graduated from our fellowship program. And in addition to that, we have Dian Zhao, who is working on a different part of the carbon management space where he is taking CO2 and he can convert that into novel SCMs, supplemental cementous materials, that can help decarbonize the cement space. And he as well has a really interesting technology that has very, very low energetics. So the cost um, is among the lowest that we've seen. And when you're building in commodity markets, you need to be very, very, very careful about your cost and the energy inputs, your feedstock. And again, we've been very excited about this technology and the way that he's been approaching this and in terms of building out his company. And then we also have Claire Nelson, who is a 2023 fellow that is very close to completing and turning on one of the world's first commercial projects for supercritical CO2 and mineralization. Now, you've probably never heard of this because there's not a lot of these mineralization projects here in the US, given the permitting constraints. So Claire and her team went over and built a lot of deep connections with Kenya and the Kenyan government, and they got fast-tracked approval permit. They got the land access, everything like that. They started drilling last year, and they're very close to turning this thing on. And by the way, this site now has pre-sold all of their credits for CO2 mineralization. And we're very excited about watching their progress as they move the world forward in all these new novel pathways for capturing CO2, utilizing CO2, and then storing CO2. Um, let's go to the next slide. I'm going to spend a few more minutes and then we'll hand it off to the fellows. But I do want to highlight another theme that we've been seeing across our portfolio. This is around critical minerals. Um, Big topic now, lots of geopolitical risk, lots of things happening with tariffs and supply chains and whatnot. Our fellows have been working in the critical minerals and mining space for many, many years now, and it's great that there's now more attention in the space. We have a couple here that I want to highlight. Yang Zhong, who invented a new biomass to battery grade graphite reactor. And why we're excited about this is because it is cheaper and faster than all the other incumbent technologies, the synthetic pathways for creating graphite, as well as in a lot of cases the other the natural pathway of mining, natural graphite. So very, very excited about this. Graphite, last time I checked, still has 95% tariff. And so that's probably going to be helping Yang in the short term. But all of our companies are not building just because of some of these short-term things. We're building for the long term. We see lots of enduring value here in what Yang is building for the future, for bringing new domestic supply chains in a very competitive way. In addition, we have Gus Marquez, who is a former mining engineer. He was formerly a chief mining engineer at a copper mine. And in his decade in the mining sector, he saw a lot of problems. One of them was how do you deal with waste, especially wastewater. And through the fellowship, he was able to find and stumble upon a new technology that could treat a lot of the mining waste effluent very, very efficiently and at very low cost, and make money just by doing a lot of the water treatment. They have a pilot that they're spinning up with an EPA Superfund. And by the way, when you're treating all this wastewater, there's a byproduct here in terms of a bunch of critical minerals that he's able to extract too, which is a wonderful bonus. Um, and then we have another company in our portfolio that has recently made a bunch of headlines. John Bardner is the founder of Stillbright. They are an electrochemical process for refining copper, and they can do that domestically here. Most of our copper actually is mined here and then gets shipped around the world to China and other areas to get refined. But they're building a completely new electrochemical pathway that can be done here in the U.S. and in a very competitive way from a cost perspective. And they just recently raised a very large oversubscribed seed round to build out their pilot and demonstration plant. So we're very excited about them. And then the last one here on the right is Caitlin, who's completely rethinking the entire pathway. What if we don't need critical minerals at all? What if we're able to transmit energy, through the subsurface, through our Earth as a medium? And they've been able to demonstrate that in a field where they have been transmitting energy right now at the rate of 10 watts or so over 50 meters, and they're planning on increasing both by an order of magnitude over the next year. So very excited about just what the world could look like as many of our fellows continue to build and put their heads down. Um, and create value. One more slide that I'll just share because I did talk about themes, but we support companies across the spectrum, technologies across the spectrum. And what does that mean? That means we also support companies in nanophotonics. James Schultz is building a very exciting infrared imaging sensor that's um, it's the cheapest, it's going to be the highest resolution, it's going to be the fastest type of imaging sensor that we've ever seen. And that's through a breakthrough that he has invented, literally in his apartment, and has been building this out of CUNY and the Nanophotonics Lab. In addition, Juniali is working on another optics breakthrough technology that may become the backbone for how we think about assembling, optical circuits. Because right now, our semiconductor supply chain has not been upgraded for a lot of the fiber optics, and especially now with AI and AI data centers and things like that, everything is becoming more optical, but the infrastructure for assembly is not there. So that's what she's pioneering. And then finally, we have others in the battery space, Richard May and Andrew Wang, who are now running New York City's largest indoor battery storage service program, and they partnered with Con Ed. We had a bunch of heat waves here in New York City, over the summer, and their systems turned on and met the moment, and where a lot of parts of the city were facing brownouts, the residents that had their systems were able to use their ACs and were unaffected. So we're very excited about what they're doing. Decentralizing, and making accessible energy storage, and these are just highlights of our fellows as they build and bring their technology to the world. I will say that before I hand it off to the fellows themselves, in my humble opinion, this is the community, right, where we help support scientists that really turn science into real world impact. And I hope you've seen a few of these examples today. So back over to you, Haley. Thank
Awesome. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and pass the baton over to Ian and Katie. Let's see if we can get them pinned. Ava, are you able to pin the two of them so that folks are seeing Ian and Katie? Thanks. Um, yeah, Ian and Katie, if you guys would introduce yourselves, talk a little bit about how you found Activate, your journey to Activate, and then what your experience has been like so far in Activate.
Ian, you want to go first?
Why not? Uh, Hi, I'm Ian McKendry. I'm one of the 24 fellows, and I'm in the battery materials and manufacturing space. So how I came to Activate, we were one of the second time around accepted applicants, and so I think I initially ran into Andrew. Maybe it was ARPA-E or some local event. And we were kind of just starting out, kind of getting our feet wet, and kind of building out the company. Um, and just finished up the Clean Tech Open Incubator and was kind of looking for, a more intensive program to kind of learn the business aspect of things and not kind of just be a whole bunch of scientists kind of dabbling in a lab and get that focus on the customer aspect. So we had applied, made it, I guess, fairly far through the process, but weren't one of the finalists. And kind of had a sit down conversation with Andrew, kind of, you know, did a good amount of learning about kind of where he thought we were, things to do. And that, was kind of the first little bit of focus that enabled us to really kind of push in the summer and make some big developments that, kind of strengthened the company. And then applied the second time around, had, kind of really strengthened and grown the company, had the bits of a business model together. And then we're selected in the 24 cohort. Activate has been real great for that community perspective. I think that's the biggest strength of it. Being a founder's can be pretty isolating and lonely, and you really don't have any idea what you're doing. So kind of having that safe space to pick much smarter people's brains, which is I think basically everybody else, was quite useful. And I think that's sufficient rambling for the time being. And I'll hand it off to Katie, and we can take some questions after.
Good. So Yeah, so Ian is in the cohort 24. I am in cohort 25. So that means my cohort just started in June. So I applied in the last round last year. Um, and I so my company is Unspent. We create a bioplastic from spent coffee grounds. And basically I had been running the company on the side of a full-time job for some time and was really getting kind of burnout, and it was getting really difficult to be doing both. And Activate, I learned about it from, I was at a conference, in a climate conference, and met someone who said, if I was a technical founder like you, I would apply to Activate. You need to look this up and see. She's like, I wanted to apply, but I don't have a technical background. And I looked it up and I was like, wow, that seems like a really awesome program. I don't know if I could get in, but maybe I'll apply. And so took the leap and applied in the fall of last year. And that was kind of me really hoping that I could do this full time. But yeah, I think many of you know on the call that it's really, really challenging to make that leap. Financially, especially. And so that is something really awesome about the fellowship. Also, for me, I was really missing that network. So I was in a corporate job and didn't have any connections, mentors. So making decisions for a startup is very difficult if you don't have the support that you need. So already just being in the program for a few months, it's been huge, the support that we've gotten, and um, can't recommend enough taking the leap and applying if you're thinking about it.
Do we have any questions from potential applicants, the folks on Zoom here?
So will this be the only time to ask questions, or will be allowed later?
Well, you can ask questions at the end as well. This is if you've got
Okay.
questions from Ian and Katie also.
Okay, yeah, I'll wait to the end.
Okay, fair.
Ask us anything. We don't bite.
Okay, yeah, so really I wanna know about the current fellows. The first question that comes to mind is what made your application like successful? Like how did you become a strong candidate?
Maybe that's a better question for the selection committee.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Andrew, I don't know, or Natasha. That's a good question though.
Well, I suppose this is our time, so we can field it and hazard a uh you know hopefully a useful guess. So yeah, we were a two-time applicant, and basically where we were, the first time around, uh, is we're kind of two guys in a lab that was freshly kind of spun out. We were kind of doing smaller experiments, and we basically proved that our kind of new manufacturing method, it worked, it made stuff. But we didn't, after so that helped us get past the first application step. And then the second one, where it was kind of more fielding questions, you could realize that, you know, probably some more, we hadn't put as much thought into, say, our business model and kind of how to go about customer approaches, kind of typical science thing of like, look, we made stuff, it's good, somebody will buy it. Um, uh, and then, additionally on top of that, how to kind of focus and center that to the kind of actual business traction that grew from that. And so, we uh, kind of made those modifications. And then, um, yeah, we kind of made those adjustments as well as kind of grew that traction and developed that scale up plan and model and how to, you know, communicate in kind of a more accessible, you know, not technical terms about kind of what the goals of the technology company were and the real value kind of in the real world from that.
Thanks, Ian. Priscilla, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my question is, I'm wondering if either of you were in New York prior to participating in Activate New York, because you know, I'm from Pittsburgh, and I'm just thinking like, what is that like to, if you aren't from New York, to go to the city, and like, how do you think that impacted your experience, like being in a new place, especially if it wasn't like New York?
You're asking the right crew, let me tell you.
Yeah. So I was living abroad in Switzerland when I applied. So I am moving across the ocean kind of in that process now. It's been a big move for me. But I think the really cool thing about it is, first of all, the New York ecosystem is really great for startups. So it's really exciting to be moving your company there. I had studied at Ohio State, and my company was in Ohio, and there's a lot more support that I'm finding so far in New York. So that's super exciting on the company front. But then also, I think Activate makes it really accessible to move because you already have a community of people. So some of our cohort for 25 is already there. Some have moved and are finishing their moves right now, and already like have friends in the cohort, and we already, you know, have things to do outside of work, which is really nice. And I mean, Haley and Natasha and Andrew all live in the area too, so they've been like great resources of um, how to find housing and what the landscape looks like and things like that.
Yeah, and we were spun out of Princeton, so we were kind of already set up a little bit in the Trenton area, so like New York adjacent. Um, so like we, you know, kind of had a bit of the gist and vibe, but you know, the great thing about New York is, or I think just kind of generally, as probably a lot of you guys are learning, is that like we all like to think our tech is really cool and important, but you know, those networks and those soft connections, you know, do a lot of heavy lifting. And so, you know, that's one why kind of all of us being together is kind of so important to get those kind of uh spontaneous water polo conversations going, as well as, you know, the kind of just population, you know, with the population density of New York, the chance of kind of running into people and kind of having you know, kind of more meaningful connections, just, you know, not on a percentage hit wise, but just on a total numbers wise is much greater. And kind of New York and NYSERDA in general have, you know, really put a lot of work and effort into kind of building up and building out that ecosystem where you know, they're really receptive to kind of taking in feedback and input, but you know, also at the same time have kind of been at it long enough that like there's a um, pretty built out framework that you can start really tapping into different things that you may or may not need.
There was a question in the chat also asking, can you walk us through your life as a cohort recipient, expectations here, as you're actually building for your customer or consumers as well? So I guess those are kind of two different questions. Walk through the timeline of becoming a member of C24, C25, and then also um, building consumers, yeah, or building for your consumers.
Um, all right, so a day in the life sort of thing. So after, you know, after we got Activate, was kind of a time of big growth for us. When we applied, it was kind of the two of us, me and our CTO co-founder. And right around the time that Activate happened and we got it, we additionally got this pretty big DOE grant funding that came through, and that allowed us to really to kind of really build out the team. We got up to, I think, six people in, a couple months after getting the fellowship. And most of them were technical. And so, we knew from talking to customers kind of what the specs were, and, from small sample scales that we were able to do in lab, we knew that, what the metrics we needed to hit and kind of what the size was. So we, a good chunk of the team focused on building out our kind of pre-pilot system that was able to do a couple of kgs per hour. And then, I spent a lot of time kind of reaching out and engaging with customers and other companies to kind of set up kind of engagements and partnerships. And so that was kind of a lot of the first 12 months, a bit of fighting with the government to get grants going, and getting our pilot system built and commissioned, and then having as many conversations with as many different people as possible to build out that momentum.
And yeah, for me, I'm sort of, I have a support network, but I'm the only full-time employee of my company. And so I'm running the day-to-day business, and the Activate Fellowship helps with that, just in terms of now I'm able to do that full time. But there's additional activities. Like they said, every Thursday we meet in person, every other Thursday we meet in person. And now we have that community. So that's kind of how it's changed since I got the Activate Fellowship. But you're working on your company as an Activate Fellow. You're not becoming an Activate employee. So if you're already working on it full time, not a lot should change in your day to day, unless you're lucky like Ian and you get a grant at the same time, and then you have a team growing. But that's kind of that. And then, that's what we're doing. So we're growing with our consumer base, working with customers. That's like a part of my daily job. So that's how I would say those two things are.
Yeah, I would just add that, you know, a lot of the times the fellows are a lot different stages. There will be kind of a group of people in the cohort who it's just an idea and they haven't kind of officially filed the paperwork yet to spin out their company. And then there's, people which was kind of our end of things where we had been, operational for a couple years prior to getting the fellowship. And then of course there's the cohort year above you who, ideally is another step ahead of you. So, it's a lot of, and so as Katie says, just you doing your company thing, with, a big support network to, oh, what lawyer do I need to talk to file my incorporation document? Or, oh, I'm looking for a contact in this area to help with my techno-economic analysis, et cetera, et cetera. And then just, having a voice or contact to, help with those problems.
I might take one more question here and then give people a little bit of a application timeline, and then we'll open it up for general questions. So Emily, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Thank you guys so much for sharing. It's nice to meet you all. I was curious, what made you decide to take the leap to actually become a founder and like commit yourself to that full time instead of going down maybe a more traditional career path?
Well,
Oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead, Katie.
I would say so. My tech is near and dear to my heart, and I knew when I finished my PhD that I wasn't done with it. I had opportunities in my PhD where we worked with industry and saw some of the benefits, and have always wanted to make that impact on the food system. I studied food science. So, I mean, I would say there was never necessarily a question of if I wanted to, it was just how. And that I think is what the Activate Fellowship enabled me to be able to do it. I think I worked in industry after my PhD for a few years, and there's pros and cons to both. There's no harm in trying both either, but for me, I think I would say all along that I loved the fast-paced startup life, and I wanted to make the impact and believed in my tech. So that's how I decided to just go for it. And I mean, there's always like multiple tries. There's lots of opportunities. So couldn't recommend. If you're interested, if it's something that you're thinking about, you'll only regret if you don't try.
And I was a little different where I kind of linked up, and I was kind of the later founder of the group where, I hooked in with engineers who are looking to kind of, bring this manufacturing technology to market. And, I kind of hooked in because I was, the chemist and, the guy who previously was using the old synthesis technology, and so kind of knew the pains and kind of saw the novelty and potential. And then, me personally, I've always been more of a, jack of all trades type person. And growing up, my family kind of ran a business, which I guess today would have been called a startup. Back then, it was just called starting a business. Um, and so it was, a grind that I knew and was fine with. And was kind of really excited about it. And I can certainly say that looking back on it, the amount that I've kind of grown personally and professionally, going through that grind, uh, has been quite, unexpectedly high, and certainly, have gained a lot more skills and a much vaster network than, had I kind of gone down a more traditional path in industry. But it is a grind, so you do have to do a little bit of introspection and kind of know yourself. So
Awesome. Thank you both so much for your time and your insight here. It is incredibly helpful. And yeah, we really appreciate you joining us today. I'm going to unpin the both of you and then uh, get into our application timeline, and then we'll jump back to general questions. So I think everyone should be able to see my screen now. For this application cycle, applications opened up yesterday, so you guys are all ahead of the game. I'm glad that you're inquiring and interested now. They will be open through October 28th. So there are other opportunities on the next slide. I'll go through some of the other opportunities to engage, ask more questions, but the September 9th to October 28th is the window that you have to apply. October to December is internal and external review. January, February, we have video interviews. In March is finalist week, where we bring in specialty matter experts to come and join while you give like a 7-minute preview of what you do and your tech, and then they ask some questions about it. And then April, fellows are selected, and June, the fellowship begins. So this is kind of what the next year could look like if you apply. Also on our website, if you go to www.activate.org/apply, that will give you where some of our webinar information is. There will also be office hours through the end of October that I did not note here, but on our website, it's all there. And if you want to sign up for future webinars and have questions about the application, all on our website. And I believe it's question and answer time. So now I can open it up to more general questions if folks want to ask us.
There was also a good question in the chat that I'm happy to answer quickly before we open it up. But do different Activate communities have different resources, and how do they differ? And in that sense, is there any particular aspect that makes Activate New York stand out other than being the best community? No, I'm just kidding. All Activate communities are extremely strong in their own way. And it's really a matter of like who you are, what your tech is, where you live, and where the best place to grow your company is. So, like, as we discussed, New York is a very strong hub for some climate related companies, or things that make sense in New York and how we can support that. For example, like we have a very strong connection with the battery ecosystem up in Binghamton, things like that. So it's really about like who you are, what your tech is, and what match makes the most sense. And so I would also encourage, if you're curious to learn about the other communities too, attending some of the more general webinars, and they can give a sense. But every community is structured in the same way, just has kind of a different set of fellows. So really, really a personal kind of who you are and where it makes most sense for you to grow your company.
Thanks, Natasha. Christopher, go ahead. You've got your hand up.
Okay, yeah. So I'm glad the last question was asked because that's what I was saving for. At the end, I just want to add a little bit to that. So we can only apply to one of the locations. Is that correct?
No, that is not correct. Good question.
Okay. All right. All right.
During your application, you can rank, I think it's 3 communities that you'd like to apply for.
Okay.
We will highly encourage you, though, to only rank communities that you'd actually be willing to move to, unless it's the Anywhere community, which is virtual.
Okay. All right. That's great. Sounds good.
Awesome. Seven.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for your time today. I had a specific question from something that was mentioned earlier. Ian, I think you said that it was important in terms of developing your application to have a good idea of the business side of the technology. And as we're thinking about supply chains for how the technology will actually be used, whether the supply or the initial input is biomass or coffee grounds, how are you able to secure some of the partnerships, or did you have to think about securing partnerships for how you were going to be able to get those raw materials, especially when you're competing with government contracts from landfills? Did Activate help you secure those government contracts, and how does that work?
Okay, I'll break this down in a couple parts, and then I'll hand it off to Katie because she's actually, I think, a little better suited for this particular question. But in the application process, as I said, all these companies are kind of different stages, and this is kind of just the process that everybody goes through. So I don't, I'm sure that wasn't the only reason why we got passed over that first particular time. But I think having a good idea or showing that you've thought about it, and it's not just kind of a generic pull a business model off of a deck is important. And it sounds like you're asking the right questions right now, and knowing that business models change. I mean, we've certainly had companies that have completely pivoted multiple times within the course of the fellowship. In terms of in terms for your application, it's not, I don't think it's important to necessarily have like locked in letters of supports and customers and things like that. Obviously it never hurts. But yeah, so I mean, having thoughts about that, and then kind of thoughts about how that would link into, say, an ecosystem that you're interested in. And certainly, after receiving the fellowship, Activate has a really strong reputation in the space, and so certainly it adds kind of extra credibility whenever you're reaching out and making calls, or people kind of within the network probably know somebody that can help you out there.
Yeah, and I think to Ian's point, I think it's a good question that you're asking already. So, I mean, in my case, I did have partnerships with some corporates for raw materials and things like that. But also like I mean, I had founded the company a couple years before and was doing it on the side and had done tons of customer interviews, interviews with the suppliers of the waste. So I think even if you don't have a partnership per se, having an understanding of the space, I think, and maybe Andrew wants to say something about that, but like is really helpful. It's showing that you're thinking about supply chain and all of those things beyond just the tech, which of course, is expected that you understand, but then there's a lot more to a business. So it's good to ask those questions and good to at least think through them logically, and do your research as much research as you can before applying.
Let me
Thank
also
you.
jump in for a minute here because and I appreciate the question as well as what Ian and Katie has been saying already. I will say that both Ian and Katie are a little bit different in terms of like the business maturity was a little bit more further along. Um, you know, we have taken plenty of fellows into our into the community that did not have the partnership set up or had not even incorporated yet. And I was just trying to figure out like what to do with this technology, this piece of technology that I can't stop thinking about. So I would say that be honest with where you are and be open with the selection team in terms of what are the outstanding questions and the risks, because those will be discussed, and be ready to talk about how are you thinking about that. Be very clear also about the differentiation, like how is this thing going to be different in the world? What would that world look like if you brought this thing into, at scale? And know that this is a long like process. You just saw the timeline. It's almost 6 months, to get through all the way to the end. And through that, hopefully, you will have learned a lot more about your business, and will be thinking about building, that into the actual business that you're building. Hopefully that process helps you as well. So that's how I think about it, and but you certainly do not need to have everything figured out, and we do not expect that at all.
Thank you.
Oh, I think you're on mute, Haley.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you, Andrew. I also will say we are at time now, and I want to be cognizant of everyone's calendars. Dirk, Chris, and Alondra, we've got some more Q&A webinars coming up in the future, so hopefully you guys are able to join those. Also, lots of more information on our website. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Thank you, Ian and Katie, also for helping us out with the webinar. And look out for more information on the website. Feel free to reach out with any questions. Thank you all. Have a good rest of your day, and hopefully you apply to Activate.